not as tall as you, Monica. Hi, everyone. I'm Gwan Tung Dorothy Lau. You can call me Dorothy. So thank you for the introduction. I'm a contemporary artist, and I talk about the themes of social and cultural identity, which I think is very fitting with today's topic here. Apart from my contemporary art, I'm actually currently working in Hong Kong as an art director for ads and music videos, so I guess we all have different roles to juggle and also like trying to achieve the symmetry in life. So today I'll be talking about the duality or symmetry in our social identity and in self-representation. So how do we represent ourselves in our social groups? So Freud explained that oneself is duplicated, divided, and interchanged, indicating that identity is not static, but rather evolve quite constantly. In my practice, this fluidity in identity and this interchangeability in how we represent ourselves plays a very important part in my works and also in my daily life. As Monica has mentioned, my works are created in using an autobiographical or like an autoreferential approach. So I try to integrate my experience living in Brisbane and also working as a creative into my works. So today we're talking about how we can untangle the interwoven aspects of different social groups that we are identify ourselves in, and how to achieve this equilibrium, but then also with reference to my works. So to start with, I think we can talk about the idea of optimal distinctiveness. Psychologist Marilyn Brewer expressed that there's a fundamental tension. Okay, thank you so much. There's this fundamental tension between humanist for validation and similarity to others and a countervailing need for uniqueness and individualization. Sorry. So, oops. So you want to feel integrated, feel belonged, and are considered as a member of your social group, but you also want to stand out within the group, but not too much to an extent that is threatening your sense of belongingness. This tension and this sort of balancing point between the two drives are explored in my works, and I evaluate this balancing drive for social acceptance and personal excellence. So today we will mainly be talking about psychoanalysis theories in relation to my works, which is actually what I'm researching for my master's. So if you have any questions, do please ask them in the Q&A session, because I'm pretty sure I'll be asked the same questions in 3 months and be challenged by my supervisor. So it'd be nice if you can help me with that. So this is a work from the Paraself series. This is Paraself number 4, which is created in 2016. It's also one of the works that is featured in the Bris Asia exhibition, A Place to Call Home, in the Laneways. When I first created this work, it was very strongly suggested that it respond to the two sides of my cultural identity, which is an amalgam of my Hong Kong upbringing and Australian education. I acknowledge that this is part of the context in this work, and I have hugely benefited from its association with this broader social political context and racial issues that are very relevant to our society. However, looking at this work again with a better understanding of the focus of my practice 2 to 3 years later, I recognize that the psychological association and the presentation of internal dialogue and the tension and interdependence of the two representations of my identities are actually very strong. In this work, a notion of burden arising from these conflicting internal dialogues and ideologies and cognitive dissonance are figuratively presented by like a digital duplication of myself in my works. This is, of course, a very pessimistic feel upon the idea of symmetry or asymmetry in life. However, I think no matter our view or an experience on conflicting identities, it is a universal phenomenon that exists, the association with multicultural identity. or multiracial identity. We all juggle different roles, and some might be psychologically carrying or are burdened by our conflicting standpoints and responsibilities. While I desperately want to get out of this blessing/curse of booking exhibitions for like the Paraself series and the Paraself series only, this work provided me with countless conceptual starting points that I extended in my later works, which are also like this sort of starting point for my exploration into psychoanalysis. So a year or so after creating the Paraself series, I created this work, 2 Chairs, which I think best illustrate my sharing today, or like summarize my sharing today about symmetry. The works are inspired and informed by Gestalt therapy, which I was receiving at the time. So Gestalt therapy is used to resolve inner conflicts, restore self-awareness, and promote self-acceptance. And this is done by staging an existential encounter that allows the patient's identity to move in a chosen direction. So they basically put 2 chairs in front of me, and we'll talk about all sorts of different situations and how I could respond to that, like presenting at CreativeMornings. So the 2 chairs would represent 2 conflicting emotional response. I would sit down in one and verbally speak, like say to psychiatrist that, oh, I don't think I'm qualified to be invited, or look at the speakers that in the past. I would get up and sit on another chair and then talk about how it's not always about how established you are, it's about what you can contribute to the conversation here. We are all some of these 2 amazing artists who are Brisbane-based, women of color, young artists. We have our narrative to share, and that's important. So, and this conversation and this therapy could be applied to any situation, whether it's like a racial thing or like a family situation or anything. And I think that's really connects back to the fluidity of identity statement by Freud that I first mentioned a while back. So presented in this work here, I dressed myself in an outfit I wore for New Year's Eve celebrations and another one that I wore for Chinese New Year. This work was created at a point where I was first invested into research beyond cultural and racial issues. So I think this is a stepping point for me to get from, okay, I'm an Asian here in Brisbane, I'm facing these issues, or like there's these everyday life situations that I want to comment on, and then also moving beyond that to think, okay, what is the context of this? Why am I feeling this way? And then I turn to the research that I've mentioned before to really contextualize this everyday phenomenon that we face as British Asians. That's a term now. Yeah, thanks to the council, like I just known about this. I think it's great. It's a great term. So apart from paraselves here, the notion of psychological burden is also seen in this work, Gloom, which is a wearable sculpture. A few aspects of Gloom respond to the notions of contradictions, so also adhering to the theme of symmetry or asymmetry. When worn and performed on the body, gloom could be interpreted as cumbersome or like enveloping, contrasting the use of soft craft materials that relates to the feelings of comfort and femininity. So it is a form that I can hide in, sort of like it's huge, but then it also demands attention due to its appearance. So there's this contradiction that lies between, do I want to conceal my identity, or is it my responsibility to be more open to it? So there's always this counter drive to it. So in my initial research, so moving past the other work, when I first looked into social psychology, I came across Dr. Michael Hog's work. So as an introductory statement, he expressed that we are driven to conform to in-group norms through self-categorization. Despite having the desire to remain our distinctive individual characteristic, we willingly characterize ourselves and put ourselves in different boxes, even though it's generally considered as like a negative thing. This speaks to the social acceptance part of the 2 drives that we were discussing just now. So yeah, no one wants to be put in a box. But I would proudly announce or introduce myself as, I'm this young artist who is kind of broke but also passionate. I am a vegan who is very passionate about climate change issues. Or I'm a young creative with a lot of opinions about social political issues. Or again, appreciation. Like you would very proudly announce yourself with these terms, and also sometimes quite like a one-dimensional or stereotypical association that with the set identity that you proudly claim. With this understanding, I turn my main focus of my art practice to investigating this phenomenon of self-representation within a social engagement situation, and sort of abiding to or working against these taxi social rules. Moving away from the visual device I've used in my previous photography works, there's this work. It's you can't find it on my website or anything. It's still a very early work, like on a developmental sort of stage, which I'm sharing with you now. So it talks about how I'm locating that conversation, but then back within this sort of creative context. So I'm an art practitioner, so I kind of want to also think about that countervailing drive within the art community. So these are disposable camera photos I've taken at art events when I first relocated back to Hong Kong. There's this distance that I was feeling with integrating into the art community. So you in a new place, or like as an emerging artist, it's you have a very strong drive to be included in the group. You want to be part of it, and you want to be considered as a serious emerging artist. But then there's in any situation, like in any social situation, there's always this challenge. Like it's not something that will just happen immediately. So I've used like a very raw format of photography too, and they are very they are taken behind people's shoulder, or like behind a pole, which is probably where I would be standing at the exhibition, and just sort of presenting what that aspect of interacting within the art community. So I could be standing here and talking to 180 of you, but then there are also other situations where I have a totally different social roles and a totally different social rules that I have to follow because of my standpoint and this. Of my identity and status. So again, about the fluidity and interchangeability of that. So because this is an environment of a creative environment, and a lot of us are creatives in this field, I also want to talk about this. Drive of personal ambition, and also the fear of failure and mediocrity, which I see as also symmetry in life. Not that they are both good, but then they are sometimes, and not to some people, very strong forces that are pulling you equally from two different sides. So this is a work that I've created during my residency, my tropical lab residency at the LaSalle College of Arts. So this is an exhibition at the Contemporary Institute of Arts in Singapore. So I have actually created two of myself, but then not in the same photo, but in a sense that one of my portraits is a very nice and expensive print that was pinned onto the wall, and then I have a map projection of the same image on top of it. And during the print is actually installed very badly, I would say, so it was just two very small pins that were holding up the print, and the print would fall repeatedly during the exhibition. The work is called Sisyphus Climbs the White Wall, which I think speaks to how, as creatives, we repeatedly attempt to claim our spot, to get our works out there. And this is a very Sisyphean or futile process, but then using such a nice venue and such an established art space, but then also talking about that, I think also speaks to how any creative or any person can integrate two of their identities, two of their different statuses into one work, and in also everyday life situations. So thank you. Thank you.